World leaders say Russia's war in Ukraine could lead to a new crisis, food insecurity. Both Russia and Ukraine are major suppliers of staples like wheat, and the conflict is impacting exports. President Volodymyr Zelensky appealed for more military assistance to avoid a global food crisis, saying he needs help unblocking export routes. Leaders met at the United Nations this past week to discuss what could be done, and earlier I spoke with Canada's ambassador to the UN, Bob Rae, who was at those meetings. Ambassador Rae, nice to see you.
Great to see you, Rosie. Thanks for having.
Thank you for being here. I know. Most of the week was spent talking about the food crisis in the world right now, and the fact that there are some 49 million people on the brink of famine. How much of that is directly connected to the war in Ukraine, and how much of it is other circumstances? Do we have a sense of how big an impact the war is having?
I think we have to sort of think about tipping points and other issues. Obviously, climate change has dramatically affected the growing periods and how much people are able to provide for their own needs. COVID has affected supply chains dramatically. But then this additional factor, this is why we call it the perfect storm or a terrible storm, that the closure of the ports, the impact on agriculture in Ukraine and in Russia has created an enormous problem.
One of the things that the Secretary General said is that there's no effective solution to the food crisis without Ukraine's supply. And he says that he is in talks, I guess, with Russia to see if they will allow other countries, Canada is one of the ones that have volunteered, to go in and help release some of that supply. What do you think are the chances that will actually come to fruition, given what we've seen in terms of response from Russia?
Well, it's tough. We had a good discussion, Minister Joly and I and the Secretary General. We also had a good discussion with David Beasley from the World Food Program. And we went through the points. The Secretary General was being very careful in the sense of saying there's still a lot of elements that need to be brought together to get us to a solution. But I think there is a willingness on the part of both Ukraine and Russia to engage with the UN and with the experts, with the team of experts that are being assembled very, very quickly to see what we can do to create a humanitarian sea corridor, which would allow for the export of grain from the port of Odessa and from other places. And all I can say is I know he's working night and day, and I know the whole UN system is working to see what more we can do to bring people together to the right place. And obviously the Americans are very directly involved. The EU is involved. It's a very serious effort. I really had a sense this week that people are working hard to find solutions. And that partly means as well, and I know it's hard for all of us to do this, but kind of don't pay as much attention to the public statements that are made. They're less important than the fact that people are talking privately about how to get to a solution. For publicity reasons, countries have to maintain all kinds of positions publicly. But I think the key thing is to try to figure out how to get to a solution, because it really is going to be critically important for the health and safety of millions of people.
But before I get to sort of where you see the conflict right now, what exactly could Canada do to help with this issue of grain and supply? I believe the minister mentioned perhaps sending ships, but perhaps you could elaborate for us.
Well, I think there are a lot of countries that want to help, and we're one of them. And we've made very clear that we're happy to do whatever it is that's helpful to get us to a solution. One of them is the fact that we are a significant grain-producing country. We know how to move grain around the world. We have to do that for our own supplies and for our own exports. So we know how to do that. And if there is shipping that can be where we can be helpful, let's get at it.
Just more broadly, the conflict's entering now, I guess its 13th week, if I'm not mistaken, and Russia's clearly trying to create a land corridor between Crimea and sort of the rest of this bottom part of Ukraine. Odessa might be part of that. I wonder whether you think the world should be prepared to accept a ceasefire or an end point where that piece of territory becomes Russian, is no longer Ukrainian.
Well, first of all, I mean, the first principle is this is not going to be settled by the world without Ukraine. Ukraine is the country that has to make the decisions about how it's going to go forward and how it's going to fight these battles. And it's not up to us to tell the Ukrainians what to do. I think one of the objectives that Russia has been not clear about is whether it is to deny to Ukraine the ability to have any kind of port on the Black Sea. I can't conceive of a circumstance in which Ukraine would accept that. And I think the Ukrainians are still, I think, right to be sticking to the point of principle, which is that you can't simply move in and by right of conquest claim that you've got control of this land, therefore it's your land for all time.
Right.
These things have to be settled by negotiation and by discussion. But I can't imagine a circumstance under which Ukraine could ever be expected to accept the fact that they would have no access to the Black Sea. That would be, I can't imagine how Ukraine could accept that.
Yeah, or how they could function economically without it. You recently tweeted.
Right.
Yeah, you recently tweeted that when Hitler invaded Poland, Chamberlain stopped looking for an exit strategy, and you said we should show at least the same resolve. What does that mean for your understanding of how this ends? How should I interpret that?
Well, like all my tweets, you should interpret them very correctly. Written. What I was trying to draw attention to is that sometimes in public commentary that people make, they're constantly looking for, let's devise an exit strategy for President Putin. And my view is President Putin needs to design his own exit strategy for his troops. He needs to get them out of Ukraine. That is the objective, and that remains the objective of the government of Ukraine. And I think that we've all been very clear that we support that. This is a terrible war of aggression, Rosie, and I think we have to expect the Russians to accept the reality that the world is not going to buckle under the effect of Soviet desires to conquest. And the other very troublesome thing for me is the fact that there is a genocidal equivalence that's being drawn between any form of Ukrainian nationalism. I mean, a pianist was thrown in jail for playing the national anthem because they said it was an example of Nazification. Well, the use of this phrase denazification covers up the intention of the Soviets to deny, the Russians to deny, the independent existence of the Ukraine. And that is one of the key issues in this war that we have to keep coming back to remind people of why it is that it is so wrong. And admittedly, you say, yes, that's true, but we have to deal in the real world. And we say, yes, the Ukrainians are going to have to decide how it is that they're going to manage their way through with the support of Western countries that are supporting them. But nobody should be under any doubt or illusion as to how we cannot accept the Russian intention to deny the reality of Ukrainian statehood and the reality of the Ukrainian people.
Okay, Ambassador, we will leave it there. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.